Good day, grade 12 dependability. So, again, the purpose of this recorded class is because we have our foundation week this week. Supposedly, we were going to have our classes for business ethics, but unfortunately, we cannot because of course you have to attend the foundation week, and of course most of you or some of you rather are involved in the process of the production of the foundation week. Some of you are participating, so I cannot really take that away from you. So, as a compromise, I will be recording all of our classes for this week. So, like I promised, we will be finishing all of the lessons for um, this for business ethics. So, we have 3 chapters, and we will be starting with the foundation of ethics. So, next week, I will be assuming that you already have watched all of the recordings so that we can continue with our next lessons. So it's your responsibility, regardless of the foundation week, to watch all of these recordings. Okay. So and the quizzes will be based as well on the lecture slides as well as the recordings. Okay. So for our lesson our very first lesson for business ethics is the foundation of ethics, chapter 2, because we already started with chapter 1 last week. So let's start off with the objectives. Our objectives is to define ethics, discuss the different characteristics of ethics, identify the different types of conscience, discuss the different factors in ethics, show the different benefits in ethics, medyo marami siya, show the 4 views of ethics, identify the 6 moral rights of individuals, and show the 3 types of justice approaches. So, kani siya tanan, all of these, we will be tackling it right now. We will try to finish it, and then by the next session, I will be again passing to you 3 recordings for 3 chapters. Just move on to the next recording. Okay? So let's continue. What's ethics pala? So ethics is derived from ethios, a Greek word meaning to have character. So the word ethics simply means, in its origin or origin word or its root word in the Greek terms is to have character. What does it mean when you have character? It refers to having right conduct. It's the theory of morality of right conduct. The good things that we do in order to for us to be good citizens or to be to have right conduct rather. So, ayan, very simple. That's what ethics is. And we will try to incorporate it in business, diba? So but of course we have to look at the foundation of ethics as well. So what are the common characteristics that constitutes an ethical person? In order for us to be a good businessman or a good businesswoman or a good business person, of course, we have to understand what makes us a good person as well in terms of ethics. Some of these characteristics are to become people of wisdom, but may wisdom tayo, the ability to discern what's right and wrong. If we are going to decide based on the process of like for example, if you're a manufacturing business and you want to create factories or to establish factories or workhouses, ang conditions of your workers there in terms of their salaries, in terms of their work environment, is it ethically good? Clean ba ang environment? Every hour ba their pay per hour is right based on the minimum wage or above that as well? Limpyo ba ang area, do they have the right materials in order for them to create the products you're selling? Is the cost of production equal to the overhead of the factory, pasweldo nimo tama ba? Very simple, kung nagabaligya ba ka, tama, dili ba illegal ang imong ginabenta? Of course, if you're a business owner, you need to have that wisdom to understand what's right and wrong. And then next is you need to have courage, of course, if you're a business person. The ability to withstand and defend oneself, to accept things we cannot change. When we are a business person, we need to understand, or when we are an entrepreneur, we need to understand what are the things that we can control, the internals, those in terms pa sa SWOT analysis pa, SW, our strengths and weaknesses, and those things that we cannot control, or we cannot change. In order for us to become better people, we have to let go of the things that we cannot change. Rather, we have to adapt to the things that we cannot change, and improve on the things that we can. We need to at least, of course, have temperance as well, the ability to control oneself. when keeping proper decorum. Of course, we're entrepreneurs. We are eventually going to work with clients. No? Sometimes our patience will be tested as well with our employees. So, kamo as an entrepreneur and as an ethical person, how will you try to balance your control? How will it be adapted into discipline rather than it being you becoming a pitchfork manager? Instead of you like getting mad all the time, no? And using it as an excuse to become iron fist or pitchfork managers, but at the same time you're becoming toxic already. Of course, you can always get mad. There's no, or you can always discipline your employees, but or have a constructive criticism when it comes to your suppliers or your clients, no. But at the end of the day, there has to be balance. Dili magpasobra pod, no. Masaba ka, sobra kaayo, no. It will then become detrimental to your business as well. Of course, you need to act fair and be impartial, no. That's justice, walay bias. There's no concept of someone is better. I will treat this person better because I like him more, or I will do this because I like him more. When I will be when I will, for example, when I'm selling products or when I'm manufacturing products, I will go to suppliers that are in favor for me, diba? In favor of me because they're my friends, regardless of, for example, they are selling illegal products or selling illegal raw materials, but because they are my friends, I will be associated with them. But of course, at the end of the day, mag-base jud ka not on, you have to base it not on your friends or conflict of, or because there is an existing interest between both parties, but because it has to be fair. Kung ang imong employee makasala, bisan pag parente nimo na, even if it's your family, you have to give due process in terms of punishment. Dili pasabot na close mo or whatever, okay na, or dawaton nimo siya sa trabaho because kailan nimo siya. There has to be equal amount of opportunities for people you do not know and people you know, and you always have to judge them based on their resume, based on their skills, not based on how close you are. That's justice, no, in terms of business. And of course, conscience, the practical judgment of reason. If you are a good entrepreneur, kabalo ko say tamang mali. Kung mali na mo ginahimo, you should be self-aware. That's the one thing that you should have as an entrepreneur or a business person, to become a person of proper reason, na kay self-awareness na mali na mo ginahimo. Kung feel nimo ikaw ang mali as a person, if you're the one doing wrong, you should admit to it rather than you putting the blame on other people. No, that's how it is in business, no? And that's how it is when you want to become an ethical person. You have to be self-aware, you should be impartial or dili ka biased, no? You should be very controlling in terms of your temper, hindi ka madali magalit, no? You should be very understanding and considerate. You should be very courageous, no? You have to understand and adapt and take the risk if you have to, and then of course you have to understand what's right and wrong. No? But of course, in conscience, we have to understand that there are very varying types of conscience, and we have to understand when or where to use it. So let's try to talk about each and every one of them. First is antecedent conscience. It means judgment before an action is done. Of course, if you're a business person or even if you're a normal person, before doing anything, you have to understand or at least discern if what you are going to do is right or wrong. For example, you're going to sell a product to a client that will use your product as a means to create illegal products. No? For example, gamito mo produkto para maghimo sila ilahang sariling product na dili siya pwede i-sell. No? For example, naga-manufacture mo kahoy. Gamito nila ng kahoy para maghimo og faulty products. No? So ikaw, before selling to clients, you have to understand, you have to research, you have to do a background check, you have to check if ang values ba ninyo or ang vision and mission in line ba sa imong clients. Dili mo na siya pwede na just because they're going to give you money, okay na. It also goes the same with bribery, di ba? When you're going to if you're a teacher, like for example, in our case, teachers, before we fail students, we have to understand if deserving ba siya or dili. So we do not just create, or when we get mad, or when we understand, or when we reprimand people or students, dili siya pwede na biglaan. We have to think before we do it, to see if tama ba or dili, no? Same with you students, when you are going to reprimand your classmates, or when you are going to through the process of things like that, you, before you do something, you have to understand, tama ba niya kung ganahimo or dili, no? This common sense. You have to first think before you do. But of course, is what we say, there's what we call consequent conscience, where we have to judge an action after it's done. Now, when we do something as well, dili lang siya enough na, ala, feel na ko, tama na ni siya yung after we do it, that's it. You have to reflect, no? What I did, was it right? Was it wrong? Tama ba? No? For example, when I help, when you think it's right to help kada mga pulubi ba, kada mga street children, tama ba siya? After you give money to them, you self-reflect. Was it the right thing to do, or could I have done something more? No, that's the one thing to do. When you help your classmates out, no, whenever there are tests or assignments that you have to do, or quizzes, and then you give answers to them, you might think that when in antecedent conscience, na tama din siya because I'm helping people out. After that, it's not enough. No, you have to think, what I did, was it right or wrong? Was it because, did I help them because I wanted to help them pass, or was it because I wanted just to help myself, no? Just to get rid of my guilt or something like that. And then we have true conscience when we judge things truly as they are. What is right universally should be right as well. Especially in virtue, di ba? The virtue of honesty. In all, when we, in situations where we really have to be honest, we really have to. That's what true conscience is. When we understand that what we are doing is truly right, and there's no sense of wrongness to it. But of course, there's what we call erroneous conscience, where sometimes we invalidate what is true, because of bias, tawag ni fallacies. We, just because we're close with people, ma twist na ang atoang sense of conscience. For example, pag lain tao mag-cheat, it's very bad. Masama kang tao, you're a bad person because you're doing this. But when it's people who are close to us, and then they admit to cheating, especially when it comes to relationships, we try to justify what they did was what they did was right or wrong, or in this case wrong, or right rather, because you're close to them. Gihimo niya ni kay kay kaila ko niya, di man siya ingani na tao, nahimo niya ni kay nahimo daotan ang partner niya. But at the end of the day, it's still wrong. You're just trying to justify it rather, because of erroneous conscience, because you have an emotional or personal attachment to a person, especially when your parents do something bad, di ba? You try to justify it, no? Or even kamo as a person, when you try to do something, giyaw-yawan na ko siya, gikasabaan na ko siya, gisagpa na ko siya, or kulatan na ko siya, sumbag na ko siya, whatever, because I feel that I have to do this because it's the right thing to do, in order for them to understand that what the other person did is wrong. But at the end of the day, do you think that what you did, in order for them to realize their mistakes, is right as well? No? You're just justifying yourself, diba? That's what's wrong with people who are racist people, who are judgmental people. No? They try to justify their actions because they think it's right, but in actuality, it's wrong. No? We also have what we call certain conscience. When it's subjective certainty of the legality of actions. When we try to interpret the legality of actions. Like for example, when for example a politician will be arrested because of, like for example, tax evasion, or may napatay siyang tao, let's say, and then biglang we interpret it as something that's that's okay. Pwede siya, dili siya ikulong, i-bail, he can be pardoned because you look up to him as a politician, something like that, diba? Or magkasakit-sakit, magkasakit, and then they can get away with the things that they're doing because some people, especially people who are in the position to change the legality of the actions, we'll look at it subjectively. There's already bias, which is bad, di ba? This, we can see this in politics. People who get arrested and get away with it. But when it comes to people na poor people, people of lower economic standing, walay bahid na subjectivity. Diretso na siya. Mali ka, gimo nimo, kulong ka regardless of your actions. Diba? It's quite bad. Sometimes we cannot get away, we cannot avoid things like these because we are human beings who are filled with bias with other people, especially with people we look up to. And then you have what we call doubtful conscience, when a person is not certain about a judgment. Kana po, when we feel like something should be thought about regardless of the action, then that's doubtful conscience. When we are not sure of how we feel, sometimes we're conflicted. Like for example, when someone who has been taking care of us has done something very bad, and then we cannot accept that they had done something bad. So, di ra na magawa si doubtful conscience. Again, it stems from bias. No? Conflict of interest. Himo, di na ko nang siya kaya kasabaan kay daghan na kay siya nahimo para sa kuha, dako og utang na loob. But at the end of the day, mali man gyapon. So, but we have doubts, no? Because of things like these. And we also have what we call scrupulous conscience. It's one which sees wrong where there is none. This is very prevalent in racism. For example, you are a black person, you're an Asian person. Therefore, you're a bad person. You should be prosecuted or you should be killed. Some people who have conscience like this are very evil. But it's always apparent in the reality. In reality. You see something that's wrong in places where there is really nothing wrong. And again, it stems from racism, bias. No? Like for example, rich people will always feel like even if they're doing something wrong, for them, it's justified because, you know, wala namang mali sa ginagawa ko, di ba? That's what they always say. Ginagawa ko lang what is being practiced for the longest time. How is that wrong? You know? So, but at the end of the day, if it's wrong, it's wrong. If there's nothing wrong with what, like for example, when you judge a person based on the color of their skin, di ba? That's already wrong. That's scrupulous conscience. There's also what we call lax conscience, when we fail to see wrong where there is wrong. Dira na jud. No? Again, it goes back to prejudice and discrimination and racism, mga things like that. Kutahay, kung walay ginahimo mali, like it's always things like these, no? When in the US, when a black person, when an African American person does something wrong or does something nothing at all, like drive a car, and then they get pulled up and then they get killed or they get arrested just for, you know, the color of their skin. And even Filipinos outside, things like that happen to them. Usually kind of mga racism. And that's bad. That's lax conscience. When we fail to see wrong where there is wrong. Racism is bad. And sometimes we try to justify it because wala naman. Like for example, when we say the N-word in the Philippines, wala namang mali dyan. Kasi it's just something that we use for fun. But we don't understand that it's a word that's very sensitive to other people. And that's wrong at the end of the day. Okay? And then, let's talk about the factors that influence business ethics. So, there are a lot of factors that influence business ethics aside from these types of consciences, no? One is performance and working environment. Very important for you guys to know that the working environment is very important when it comes to business ethics. If you have a bad working environment, everyone is at odds at each other. Everyone is getting mad, medyo nagalibakanay na problema sa isa kaani na tao, nga na, gubot na. No? There will not be a good business environment if people are getting mad at each other. Especially if your manager or if an employee is doing something bad and he's just getting away with it or she's just getting away with it, no? So performance as well. If you have bad performance, it affects the whole workplace. You're a liability already, and you have to be held accountable for your bad actions. Ana dyan ang importante. No? But if you're a good performer, or if everyone is doing good, the work environment is healthy, then it becomes a very good, healthy work environment as well. No? It always is like that. It's just like in the household. If toxic ang people around you in the work, in the what they call this, in the environment, in your family, in your household, it also becomes mataktan ka, no? What do you call this? No? Everyone will be affected by it. deontology as well is a big effect. What's deontology? It's the philosophy that says people should meet their obligations and duties when analyzing an ethical dilemma. It simply means that when we are going to, or when we are facing problems, you always have to do the right thing. That's how deontology is practiced. Whenever there's something bad that will happen, always solve problems doing the right thing. Pag nainangawat, dapat usay mo ni mo, dili mo na pasagdan lang. Imo na tanggal sa trabaho or storyahon, di ba? Yeah. Of course, legal rights as well is very important, no? When we are going to protect, or when we are going to practice freedom of religion, speech and assembly, protection, and so many things, no? So many legal processes and rights. When we do not practice this in the workplace, it becomes a problem. Especially in terms of, like, for example, hindi mo binibigyan ng leave ang employee mo. That's bad, di ba? When magkasakit yung mga employee niya, wala kay proper health or support in terms of their health, financial obligations sa hospital. Mga ingana ng mga problema. Dagko na problema, no? Pag may mga sexism in the workplace, sexual harassment in the workplace, and then there's no proper avenue for you to grieve, or for grievance rather, na magreklamo, what will happen, di ba? So these are some characteristics of the ethical organization. One is, ethical organization is based on fairness dapat. No? Next, there should be equal treatment without discrimination. No? And the benefit of the stakeholder is given precedence over your own interest. Dapat kung unsay concern sa imuhang stakeholders, your clients, your customers, it should be given an ample amount of precedence, or mas importansya siya rather than sa imuhang own interest. There should also be clear communication, and what's done should be done, and how it is done should be clearly stated. Walay tago-tago dira, no, kung unsay dapat himuon, dapat mo na to. And then, no bureaucracy, minimum bureaucracy, no? Or dili na kailangan agihan og taas na process, medyo lisod na process. If there's a easier process or more convenient process, why not, no? Compliance with applicable laws as well. There should be no illegal actions that are done in an ethical organization. Okay? So, of course, let's continue with the final part, which is the 4 views of ethics. So, there's a lot of views of ethics that can be translated in business ethics as well. First is utilitarianism. Decisions are made in utilitarianism based on, or solely on, the outcomes or consequences. No? What's the greatest good is provided for the greatest number. Now, there's this type of ethics, especially in the workplace, where we have to sacrifice some things in order for the betterment of the company. For example, when the company is undergoing financial struggles, then kailangan nimo magtanggal og tao. That's bad, di ba? But in utilitarianism, we really have to fire some people or mag-retrench tag people, because if we do not, then what will become of the company in general? Mawala siya, mabankrupt siya, di ba niya kaya magpasweldo lang yung tao. That's how utilitarianism is justified, no? So, magtanggal kay tao because the company has to survive at the end of the day. It's all about what's great for the most people rather than the few. Yeah. Of course, moral right view is different, no? It's more in respecting and protecting the fundamental rights of your employees, or the people rather. No? What's the best interest of everyone should be followed, in short. So dapat i-practice nimo ang right of free consent, no? Pananghid ba, or dapat kanang both parties should agree on things before it is done, no? Right of the privacy of the person. For example, in the workplace, naglaag siya sa iyang leave, dili mo na i-judge, kay iya man ang right na maglaag dira og maglakaw, no, and do what he wants to do during his or her private time. Right of freedom of conscience as well, no? When I think I am right, it has to be respected as long as walay ginaapakan na laing tao. Right of free speech, I also should have a voice whenever there are concerns, rather than it being suppressed by my manager or my boss. Dili na siya maagi sa right na what do you call this, right path, di ba? Or right of due process as well, dili pwede, like for example, nakamali ka, gitanggal ka diretso. Or kung na ay gihimo ng or for example when you want to do something diretso, or when you are being reprimanded diretso ka na pakaulawan or whatever, there should always be due process when there are mistakes or when there are things that are to be done, no? And right of life and safety, there should always be safety. You should always feel safe when you're in the workplace as well. Okay? And then the last or the second to the last view is the justice view. There should be impartial treatment. Mo na importante class, no? There should always be fair treatment when it comes to the legal rules and standards of the workplace, no? Decisions should always be equal, no? There should be equity rather than equal, and pwede rin equality, fairness and impartiality. Dili tungod kay malapit ka sa imong manager, di na kakasabaan. Kunya ang lain, kasabaan na pirmi. Ana. And then, there are 3 types as well of justice approaches. We have distributive justice, where treatment of people should not be based on arbitrary characteristics. Dili based sa iyahang nawong, no? But based on kung unsay objective facts. No? Procedural justice, where there should be equality and justice for everyone. There should be a procedure when it comes to the impartiality, of the mistakes or the process that have to be done rather. And compensatory justice, pag naay sala ang company or ang lain tao sa imuha in the workplace or especially the company, there should be a remuneration, or dili man remuneration, but there should be a financial equivalent to the damage that has been done. That's compensatory justice. Dili pwede nang sorry lang, no? Injustice view, there should be compensation. And then last but not the least, the individualism view, no? The acts that promote individual interests. What I want out of myself, what I feel to be right, as long as there's walay ginaapakan na tao, should be the right thing for me. Like for example, I want to grow in this company, so therefore I will strive, and if I will not strive, I will leave the company. Si company dapat dili ka i-hold against sa imuha. Dili ka pwede mo hawak kay nagkuan ka, no? Bawal nang nai-kontrata class na i-hold ka for a very long time, no? Like for example 10 years, or kung walay condition na kumuhawa ka. No? Okay lang na ibayad or whatever. Basta kung gusto ka muhawa or gusto ka then why not? If you have to complain in order for you to get what you want, then that's your right. This individualism view, no? Individualism view. So that's how it is, no? And actually, the foundation of ethics, there are so many things that you can look into, and there are so many things that you can follow, and that you have as a worker, or an entrepreneur, or an employee, should at least see these things as well. Okay? So I think that's it for the chapter 2 lesson. We will continue with the chapter 3. No? So let me end this. Okay? So next video is the code of ethics.